6 a.m. to squad cars, my wife in cuffs. Brenda smirking on her front steps like she just won the lottery. And then Elena flashes her badge, and the entire situation flips like a light switch. Picture this. I'm standing in my Phoenix driveway, barefoot in pajamas, watching the self-appointed queen of our HOA orchestrate what she clearly believes is the bust of the decade. The sharp morning air carries that distinctive mix of creosote and righteous indignation, while the snap of handcuffs rings out down our pristine, Stepford-esque street. Brenda had called 911, accusing my wife of impersonating a federal agent and committing serious crimes. She even got Channel 12 to show up because public shaming doesn't count without news coverage. "Ma'am, you're being placed under arrest for pretending to be a federal officer," the cop announced, practically reading from a script. Brenda must have rehearsed. Then Elena, cool as ever, replies, "Officer, may I show you my Department of Justice ID?" She produces her badge. Brenda's smug expression vanishes faster than ice on blacktop. The same woman screeching about justice was seconds away from getting a crash course in what real federal crimes actually look like. Now tell me, what would you do if your neighbor tried to have you arrested for literally doing your job? Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from, because it only gets wilder from here. But let me rewind 18 months to when this mess first started. I'm Marcus, 45, Navy vet turned telecom contractor. I thought we'd found our dream life in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. Spoiler, I was dead wrong. My wife, Elena, she's the kind of woman who makes white-collar criminals break into a sweat. 15 years with the DOJ's Financial Crimes Division. She's brought down money launderers, embezzlers, and corrupt executives who thought they were above the law. But to our neighbors in Willowbrook Estates, she was just that unemployed lady who stayed in bed till noon. See Willowbrooks, the kind of master-planned community outside Phoenix where uniformity isn't just encouraged, it's enforced. Lawns cut to exactly 2 inches, mailboxes painted in the approved shade of beige, flags angled to the precise degree listed in the HOA rules. The scent of fresh Bermuda grass mixed with the quiet panic of people clinging to their property values fills the air every morning. And then there's Brenda Hutchinson, HOA president, retired bank manager, full-time neighborhood tyrant. Imagine a woman forced into early retirement who redirected all that middle management energy into policing her neighbors. At 58, she'd found her calling, micromanaging an entire community with the righteous fury of someone who just discovered power. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, Brenda would strut out of her beige bunker in a pink tracksuit, clipboard in hand, scanning the streets like a predator. The crunch of her orthopedic shoes on gravel became our daily alarm clock and Elena's personal horror soundtrack. From the jump, Brenda had her sights locked on Elena. Because when you're undercover in financial crimes, your routine doesn't exactly match that of a typical suburban soccer mom. Elena's schedule included late-night surveillance, sleeping through the morning, switching unmarked government vehicles, and occasionally arriving home in tactical gear. Brenda saw one thing: sketchy. "I'm just saying," she'd mutter loudly to anyone nearby, "normal people have normal routines. What kind of woman drives a different car every week and sleeps all day? Makes you wonder how she pays the bills." The implication hung in the dry air like humidity in a Florida summer, uncomfortable, thick, and inescapable. Things only got worse when Elena started working a big case on crypto fraud. More nighttime stackouts, more mysterious jargon, more government-issued gear. For Elena, just another Tuesday. For Brenda, it was everything her nosy little heart needed. Then came the tipping point one October morning. Elena was doing legit surveillance from our driveway. She sat quietly in an unmarked sedan, jacket hiding a tactical vest, earpiece discreetly in place, professional, legal, important. Brenda spotted her and decided she was watching a live-action roleplay. 20 minutes later, she's banging on my door like the FBI herself. "This ends today, Marcus," she snapped, red-faced and flailing a paper in my face like it was a restraining order. "I don't know what twisted fantasy your wife's living out, but impersonating law enforcement is a federal offense." I tried to reason with her. "Brenda, I think there's a misunderstanding." "Nope, no confusion here," she barked. "I've got evidence. The costume, the radio, the weird cars. She's turning this place into a circus and crashing our property values while she's at it." The violation notice read, "Resident engaged in impersonation of law enforcement. creating safety concerns and potential legal risks. Fine, $500 per day until compliance. That evening, Elena read the notice and laughed so hard I thought she might choke. 15 years of busting federal criminals, and now I'm getting fined for looking like me. What we didn't know was that Brenda's obsession was about to unravel things bigger than either of us expected. Within 48 hours, Brenda had escalated things. She scheduled an emergency HOA meeting and retained a lawyer at $300 an hour. A certified letter hit our mailbox Thursday, thick, expensive, and reeking of overkill. My Navy instincts kicked in. Someone's launching a legal attack. Time to study. The rules of engagement. The letter, in bold, formal notice of HOA hearing, criminal impersonation allegations. 3 pages of legalese from a guy named Mitchell Hawthorne, demanding Elena cease all law enforcement cosplay or risk a lien on our home. Here's the thing about military life, you get real good at reading fine print. So I brewed a strong cup, cracked open the HOA SCCNRS, and went hunting. Page 47. Section 4.3. No HOA president may approve legal expenses over $250 without board approval. Jackpot. Brenda had blown right past that and done it without a vote. Even better. Section 7.1. Board members are personally liable for unauthorized spending. As my old chief used to say, when someone doesn't know their own rules, those rules become your weapons. That afternoon, I filed a formal complaint to the HOA management company. Brenda, I argued, owed the community a refund. Meanwhile, our neighborhood Facebook group turned into a war zone. Brenda posted zoomed-in shots of Elena in her tactical gear, captioned with things like community safety concern and when does roleplay become dangerous. Team Brenda chimed in with tales of paranoia and plummeting home values. Team Elena pointed out she kept to herself and had the greenest lawn in the zip code. Brenda's piece de resistance. A community safety forum scheduled for Sunday night. Flyers promised tips on protecting property values from disruptive elements. Code words that made my skin crawl. We went, of course. Couldn't resist watching the carnage unfold live. The community center smelled like scorched coffee and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. 30 or so neighbors showed up, tension thick as fog. Brenda had a full-blown PowerPoint queued up, complete with slides labeled criminal red flags and protect your investment. She was mid-rant, dissecting Elena's every move when Elena's phone rang. Her federal supervisor. Yes, sir, Elena answered. Surveillance resumes at 0600. Asset placement confirmed. Short, direct, exactly how a federal agent talks. Brenda overheard and lit up like a Christmas tree. Did everyone hear that? She crowed. She's using military time. Surveillance, this is what I've been warning you about. She's delusional. Some neighbors nodded. Others looked bewildered. No one seemed to make the obvious connection. Elena sounded like a federal agent, because she is one. When Elena came back in, everyone stared at her like she'd just grown a second head. Everything okay? She asked, confused. Oh, just peachy, Brenda purred. We were just discussing how seriously the FBI takes federal impersonation. Elena gave me the classic what the hell now look. You know what, Brenda, she said coolly. You should call the FBI. I think they'd be very interested in all this. Brenda's grin widened. Don't worry, honey. I plan to. As we walked home under the desert sky, Elena shook her head. 15 years of federal service, and this lady thinks I'm playing dress up. I squeezed her hand. She has no idea what's coming. And she really didn't. Because while Brenda was busy prepping her FBI complaint, she didn't realize her own financial skeletons were about to come crashing out. Monday morning dawned with blazing desert heat. Most people stayed inside, but Brenda, she stormed into the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office at 8:47 a.m. sharp. Yes, she logged it, ready to drop the hammer. Her mission? File a formal report against Elena for federal impersonation and running a criminal operation. How do I know? Officer Rodriguez called me later, barely holding back laughter. Marcus, he asked, your wife isn't running some elaborate scam, is she? Because this lady just handed us a binder thicker than my academy manual. Brenda had spent the weekend compiling what she called her evidence portfolio, photos of Elena in gear, logs of her movements, snapshots of government vehicles, quotes from federal statutes. The woman had built a criminal case against a federal agent. She's demanding an immediate arrest, Rodriguez said. Claims your wife is an illegal private security operator and a threat to public safety. I've seen wild complaints, but this one's going in the Hall of Fame. Here's the twist. When someone reports impersonation, the first step is to run the vehicle plates. Elena's car came back as an active DOJ asset. 2 hours later, Rodriguez arrived at our door, looking like he'd stumbled into a Kafka novel. The heat was unbearable, and the air smelled like hot pavement and ozone. Elena was out back, pruning roses in tactical pants from that morning's surveillance shift. Function beats fashion every time. Ma'am, I need to ask you a few things, Rodriguez said, amused. May I see your ID? She pulled out her DOJ credentials. Badge, ID, all of it. Rodriguez examined them, then called dispatch to confirm. Radio crackles. Badge 847,392 active DOJ Criminal Division. 15-year service record. Rodriguez visibly relaxed. Mum, sorry for the hassle. Just following protocol. No worries, officer, Elena smiled. What was I accused of? He read from his notes. Impersonating a federal agent, operating unauthorized security, and my favorite, engaging in suspicious surveillance that could impact property values. Elena laughed. That's a new one. Rodriguez wasn't smiling anymore. Ma'am, false reports against federal agents fall under Title 18, Section 101. That's a 5-year felony. And from where I'm standing, this was no misunderstanding. It was 3 days of deliberate action based on fabricated claims. Elena's demeanor shifted. No longer amused, now very interested. I'm not looking to press charges, she said carefully. She seems confused. With respect, Rodriguez replied, confusion doesn't come with printed binders and formal statements. This was intent, and as all this played out in our driveway, Brenda was glued to her kitchen window watching her plan crumble like bad drywall. She probably thought she'd witness Elena being hauled off in cuffs. Instead, she stood there as Rodriguez shook Elena's hand, chuckled at something she said, and drove off without so much as issuing a warning. The mental whiplash must have been intense. That evening, Brenda returned, this time with backup. Harold from a few houses down and Mrs. Patterson from the corner joined her, both of them looking like they regretted showing up. I heard the police were here, Brenda said, nearly vibrating with excitement. When are they coming to arrest her? They're not, I told her, savoring the moment. Brenda's face morphed through more expressions than a mime in a wine tunnel. What do you mean they're not? I filed official charges. I have documented proof. Well, I said, turns out Elena's a federal agent. Funny how facts work, huh? The silence that followed was so thick, I could hear Mrs. Patterson's hearing aid emitting a high-pitched whine. Harold even took a step back, as if proximity to a federal agent might be contagious. That's not possible, Brenda stammered. Real agents don't. They wouldn't. You're all lying. Elena stepped forward, casually flipping open her badge holder. Doge Criminal Division. Badge 847,392. Feel free to verify. But instead of backing off, Brenda's desperation surged. Then she fooled them too. Real criminals can fake anything. I'm calling the FBI. They'll see right through this charade. As her makeshift crew backed away, Elena sighed. She's about to call the FBI on someone who works with the FBI. This is going to be amazing, I said. And it was. Brenda didn't just call the FBI, she went nuclear. She filed a formal complaint online complete with a 40-page report that could have impressed Cold Warrior KGB. She included screenshots, timelines, statements from witnesses, and enough circumstantial fluff to build a RICO case. Her report claimed Elena was orchestrating a complex criminal network, impersonating a federal agent, conducting illegal surveillance, and possibly prepping for acts of terrorism. She even included Google Maps screenshots showing Elena's patrol paths and traffic flow evidence that supposedly proved a strategic infiltration of our neighborhood. The FBI's Phoenix field office received her magnum opus that Thursday morning. By the afternoon, Elena's phone rang. Agent Vasquez? This is Special Agent Thompson from the Phoenix office. We got an interesting complaint about you today. Mind telling me what you're working on that might have stirred up the locals? Elena nearly choked on her coffee. Sir, I'm doing routine financial surveillance on the Morrison crypto case. Standard white-collar work, nothing field-related. Well, according to a Mrs. Hutchinson, You're either a criminal mastermind or the most committed method actor in Arizona. She's submitted enough documentation to bring our fraud unit to tears of joy. The call lasted 20 minutes. Thompson was professional, methodical, and increasingly amused as Ilona laid out the HOA drama. By the end, he even offered to call Brenda himself to clarify federal procedure. I appreciate it, sir, Ilona said, but I think Mrs. Hutchinson is about to get a real-world lesson in the consequences of false claims. Meanwhile, I'd started my own investigation. After 8 years in the Navy wrestling with red tape, I knew exactly how to weaponize paperwork. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for Brenda's FBI complaint, curious to see the full scope of her accusations. 2 weeks later, the response landed in my inbox and it was a masterpiece of wild conspiracy. Brenda had spun an entire alternate reality around Elena's work hours, accusing her of laundering money, trafficking drugs, and even hinting at involvement with foreign intelligence. But here's where things took a serious turn. Submitting false claims to federal agencies isn't just bad form, it's a federal crime, with real consequences. Back when I was stationed in Norfolk, our legal officer had a saying, never lie to feds. They have all the time in the world to prove you wrong. Brenda was about to learn that the hard way. Elena's supervisor, Deputy Assistant Director Sarah Olivia, had been quietly monitoring the situation. A former federal prosecutor with 15 years of experience locking up white-collar offenders, Olivia understood both the legal and professional risks of allowing harassment like this to fester. Elena, she said during their weekly call, this woman's filed false reports with local police and the FBI. At what point does this become harassment that interferes with your duties? She hasn't disrupted any operations, Elena replied. Just made home life interesting. Interesting isn't the word I'd use. She's accusing a federal agent of serious crimes with fabricated evidence. That's not neighborhood gossip, it's a felony. Elena didn't argue. She knew Olivia was right, but she also knew that turning this into a federal case would spark media outrage, with headlines screaming about government overreach. Let me try a diplomatic route first, she said. If that fails, we'll explore other measures. What Elena didn't say was that her version of diplomatic meant laying out her federal credentials in front of the HOA board and revealing the scope of Brenda's accusations. That chance came quicker than expected. Emboldened by her FBI complaint, Brenda called for an emergency HOA meeting the next Tuesday. The meeting agenda, community safety, addressing local criminal activity and federal corruption. She even invited Channel 12 News, claiming she had a bombshell story about government misconduct. The reporter, likely expecting a slow news day HOA spat, agreed to cover it. What Brenda didn't realize was that she was about to be the subject of her own very public undoing. The community center packed out quickly. Word had spread faster than a church potluck scandal. Folding chairs filled up, phones came out, and everyone waited to see what would unfold. Brenda stood proudly at the front, her presentation loaded and ready. Her title slide read, "Protecting Our Neighborhood When the Government Fails Us." Tonight, she declared, you'll hear the truth about the criminal network hiding in our own community and the federal agents shielding them. Elena and I sat quietly in the back, watching the slow-motion disaster unfold. She had her badge with her but hoped she wouldn't need it. She was going to be disappointed. While Brenda was busy constructing her FBI-worthy conspiracy board, I'd been doing what any decent telecom contractor would, following the money. My work revolves around financial software and integration, so I know how to read spreadsheets like gospel and catch inconsistencies that most would miss. And something about the HOA's monthly reports had been bugging me. The math wasn't adding up. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where 2 + 2 = 5. Elena's mantra echoed in my head. If something doesn't make sense, follow the money. Our HOA brought in around $180,000 each year from 96 homes. Normal costs, landscaping, pool care, insurance, admin expenses were consistent, predictable. But Brenda's reports showed spending that made Vegas look thrifty. The first red flag: consulting fees. Over 18 months, the HOA had paid $23,000 to a company called Desert Management Solutions. No one, including board members, could say what they'd actually done. Then there was Pinnacle Landscaping, $31,000 for community beautification. Yet the grounds looked exactly like they did when we moved in, minus a dead palm tree that had been rotting by the mailbox for months. The smoking gun came from credit card statements. Brenda had been using the HOA card for everything from groceries to department stores to gas and even what looked like vacation rentals in Sedona. I cross-checked every transaction against actual services. The pattern was unmistakable: classic embezzlement. Fake businesses, fake invoices, self-approved payments, and a leadership style that silenced questions through intimidation. At the end, Elena found me buried in printouts and calculator tape. "What are you doing?" "She's been stealing from the HOA," I said, pointing to the spreadsheet. $47,000 over 2 years. "Maybe more." Elena leaned in, her trained eye scanning the data. "Shell companies, fake invoices, credit card fraud. This is textbook white-collar theft." The irony was brutal. Brenda had been accusing a federal financial crimes agent of wrongdoing while pulling off her own embezzlement scheme. It was like a burglar calling the cops to report suspicious activity at the house they were robbing. "Can you do anything about it?" I asked. "Officially, no. Massive conflict of interest." "But Marcus. Elena's eyes lit up with that look she got when a case clicked into place. "This falls under state jurisdiction. Arizona Title 13. Anything over $10,000 is a felony." She was right. Brenda hadn't just abused her power, she'd crossed into serious criminal territory. She's also been hiding the missing funds by cutting corners, postponing maintenance, slashing insurance, skipping inspections. The pool hasn't had proper chemical treatment in months, and she's buying cheap insurance that likely won't cover anything major. Elena sat down slowly. "So while she's been harassing us over made-up crimes, she's committing real ones that could bankrupt the entire neighborhood." "Yep." Elena smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "I think it's time Brenda found out what a real criminal investigation looks like." The tables were turning. Brenda had no idea how close the jaws were. By that weekend, I'd turned our dining room into a full-scale operations center. Coffee brewed non-stop, documents sprawled across every inch. That righteous fury had transformed into laser-focused planning. I wasn't alone. Elena couldn't investigate directly, but she could teach me how to build a rock-solid case that even the toughest prosecutor couldn't ignore. "Rule number 1, she said, handing me coffee at sunrise: document everything, assume nothing, and follow the money until the truth shows up." Our first recruit, Roberto Martinez, retired CPA, 4 houses down. He'd spent 3 decades auditing books for the state and had a soft spot for financial puzzles. When I showed him Brenda's records, he grinned like a kid at Christmas. "This is gorgeous," he said. "Shell companies, padded invoices, personal charges buried in community expenses. A perfect small-time embezzlement case." Roberto agreed to prepare a full forensic report complete with court radio exhibits. Apparently, taking down fraudsters was his idea of retirement fund. Next came Sarah Kellerman, a former paralegal who'd spent 20 years working defense on white-collar cases. She knew what evidence prosecutors needed and how to get it. "Arizona law is clear," she said, pulling up statutes. "Any HOA board member who misuses funds over $10,000 is guilty of felony theft." Brenda's looking at a Class 3 felony to 8 years. Her real value: HOA law expertise. She knew exactly how to remove a board member legally and permanently. Our third team member was Tom Bradley, a retired Marine and former military police officer. Tom knew how to gather evidence, take statements, and coordinate with law enforcement without contaminating the case. "The key," he said during our planning session, "is building 3 cases: civil, criminal, and HOA. They all reinforce each other." Last came Jennifer Walsh, stay-at-home mom and social media guru. Brenda had used online platforms to spread her conspiracy. Jennifer would use them to deliver truth, fact-checked, documented, and perfectly timed. "We control the narrative," she said, setting up our secure team chat. She weaponized lies. "We'll fight back with facts." Under Elena's guidance, we were becoming something dangerously close to a professional task force. She couldn't touch the case herself, but she taught us everything we needed to dismantle Brenda's little empire from the ground up. "Never jump to conclusions about malicious intent when plain old incompetence might be to blame," she cautioned us. "But when the same red flags keep waving over a long period, you're usually not looking at clumsiness, you're looking at calculated wrongdoing." Roberto's deep dive into the finances revealed just how far Brenda had gone. She'd set up 3 fake companies, each tied to PO boxes under her control. Desert Management Solutions, Pinnacle Landscaping Services, and Willowbrook Security Consulting were nothing more than names on paper, but together, they'd funneled more than $47,000 of HOA money. Sarah took it upon herself to dig into the legal protocols for emergency board meetings and member votes. Arizona law said it took a 2/3 vote to remove someone from the board for misconduct, but also left room for swift action when there was suspicion of a crime. Tom organized all the evidence. He built intricate timelines cross-referencing financial records with board meeting notes. He also pinpointed residents who had raised concerns about Brenda's spending or spotted unusual service disruptions. Jennifer handled all digital documentation, making sure everything was backed up in several places. She also kept tabs on Brenda's increasingly unstable online presence, especially as Brenda geared up to make her big, public move against Elena. By Sunday night, we had enough to pursue both criminal and civil actions. But more importantly, we had a strategy, one that would bring Brenda's crimes into the spotlight right as she tried to ruin Elena's name. Tuesday night, Elena said, "Going over our plan one last time. She's going to try to have me arrested on live TV for impersonating a federal agent." Instead, Brenda was about to find out what happens when you break the law while accusing a real agent of faking credentials. The poetic justice was going to be almost too good. Monday morning hit with that chaotic energy that only comes when panic and pressure collide. Brenda must have caught wind of the growing curiosity around the HOA's finances because she went into damage control like a scandal-ridden politician. The alarm bells started ringing at 6 a.m. when she announced an emergency board meeting for that afternoon. The agenda was suspiciously vague, something about administrative restructuring and financial security protocols. Roberto, who'd been quietly chatting with neighbors, got word that Brenda was planning to reorganize the financial records. In other words, she was going to shred the evidence. By 10 a.m., she was already at the community center with a shredder that sounded like it was chewing through tree trunks. The grinding noise echoed across the parking lot, interrupted only by the occasional crunch of paper being destroyed. Jennifer, ever the marketer with a sixth sense for spectacle, happened to be walking her dog past the building. She started filming 20 minutes of footage showing the HOA president frantically destroying documents the day before her major presentation. "Yeah, that would come in handy. She's shredding records," Jennifer texted our group. "Want me to call the cops?" "Not yet," Tom replied. "Let her keep digging." Meanwhile, Brenda was making rounds like a mob boss, only slightly less subtle. Harold, who lived 2 houses down, got a not-so-veiled warning about the dangers of spreading rumors. Mrs. Patterson received a certified letter threatening a defamation suit if she kept attending conspiratorial meetings. But the piece de resistance, a voicemail Brenda left for Elena's supervisor at the DOJ, loud enough for Roberto's wife to hear it clear as day from the driveway. "This is Brenda Hutchinson, and I'm reporting severe misconduct by one of your agents. Elena Vasquez is misusing federal resources to intimidate residents. I have proof she's running illegal ops from her home. If nothing's done immediately, I'm going to the press with evidence of federal corruption." When Elena listened to the recording Jennifer captured, she couldn't help but laugh. "She's accusing me of abusing federal power while she's literally stealing from the HOA. The projection is wild." That afternoon's board meeting felt like a dictatorship in action. Brenda had packed the room with loyalists and tried to push through several motions that would seal her control. Motion 1. Hire a financial security firm to protect HOA assets. The firm would be paid $15,000 upfront and report only to Brenda. Motion 2. Change the bylaws so residents needed unanimous board approval to request financial documents, basically giving Brenda a permanent veto. Motion 3. Emergency fees $500 per household for security concerns and legal costs. Roberto went to the meeting. He later said it was like watching someone attempt surgery with a chainsaw. She wasn't even pretending anymore. When Harold asked who the security firm was, she actually said, "That's classified for board members only." 2 people walked out. 3 more started asking why emergency fees were necessary when our financial reserves were supposedly fine. Brenda's responses got more combative and paranoid. "There are forces in this community working to destabilize property values," she insisted. "I won't let outside agitators ruin what we've built." But the real drama began when Elena's supervisor returned her call. Deputy Assistant Director Olivia had done her homework. Brenda, it turned out, had filed complaints with a string of federal agencies accusing Elena of everything from espionage to terrorism. Elena, this woman has called the FBI, the ATF, and Homeland Security. She even reached out to the Attorney General's office and somehow made it to the Inspector General's hotline. Chen's tone had shifted from amused to concerned. This isn't HOA drama anymore. She's obstructing a federal officer and wasting government time with these baseless reports. Elena replied calmly, "It'll resolve tomorrow night. She thinks she's having me arrested in front of the neighborhood, but what's really going to happen is the evidence will speak for itself." She laid out everything we'd uncovered: embezzlement, fake companies, the whole mess. Olivia said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Elena, if this woman's been stealing HOA money and making false reports about federal agents, she's in for a very, very bad week." The trap was in place. All that remained was for Brenda to walk right into it. Tuesday arrived like a storm waiting to strike. Brenda had turned the community center into her own courtroom, complete with projection screens, evidence tables, and enough spotlighting to rival a courtroom drama. The smell of burnt coffee filled the air as neighbors filed in, phones in hand, ready to record whatever chaos might unfold. Word had spread fast tonight would either be a triumphant reveal or an unforgettable collapse. She'd invited everyone: local news, the sheriff's department, 3 federal agencies, and seemingly half the neighborhood. She even hired a court reporter because apparently she wanted an official record of Elena's arrest. Brenda took the mic. "Tonight," she declared, "we bring justice. This community has been under siege by criminals pretending to be law enforcement, but I have uncovered the truth." Her presentation was titled Operation Neighborhood Watch: Unmasking Federal Corruption and Criminal Collusion. She'd clearly spent too many nights watching conspiracy thrillers. Elena and our team sat in the back, watching the disaster unfold. Like a slow-motion train wreck, Brenda started by flashing surveillance photos of Elena taken over months. "The subject shows clear signs of covert behavior," she narrated, pointing to a photo of Elena watering her plants in tactical pants. The room stayed quiet except for a few suppressed chuckles. Mrs. Patterson raised her hand. "Brenda, isn't that just Elena doing yard work?" "Exactly what she wants you to believe," Brenda snapped. "These people are experts at blending in." Then came the bombshell. Brenda started showing Elena's work emails obtained illegally. "Look at the terminology," she said, highlighting words like asset placement and target acquisition. "This is coded criminal communication." Officer Rodriguez stood up. "Ma'am, that looks like standard federal law enforcement correspondence. Where did you get those emails?" Brenda's face flushed. "A concerned citizen shared them through the proper channels. Intercepting federal emails is a felony. I need to know the source." The room turned ice cold. Even Brenda's loyalists looked uneasy. But Brenda didn't flinch. She escalated. "I demand Elena's immediate arrest," she shouted, finger pointed like a courtroom drama villain. "She's running a criminal enterprise." That's when Elena stood, holding up her badge. "Ma'am," she said, steady as ever, "I'm Special Agent Elena Vasquez, DOJ Criminal Investigations Division. Badge number 847,392. Would you like to call headquarters to confirm?" The silence was deafening. You could hear the wind outside. Brenda stood frozen, jaw moving but no sound coming out. Then, with astonishing commitment to the spiral, she screamed, "That's fake. Anyone can forge a badge." "I want verification." Agent Thompson from the FBI stepped forward. "I can confirm Agent Vasquez's credentials. I spoke with her supervisor earlier today." Brenda spun toward him, eyes wild. "Then, you're in on it too? How deep does this conspiracy go?" That's when Roberto stood up, holding his forensic accounting report. "Speaking of conspiracies," he said calmly, "maybe we should talk about the $47,000 Mrs. Hutchinson siphoned from our HOA funds over the past 2 years. The room erupted. Residents began shouting. The news reporter rushed over to Roberto and Brenda. Brenda looked like the desert sand had drained every ounce of color from her face. The truth had landed. "That can't be true," she murmured, but in the sudden hush, her words echoed. "On the contrary," Roberto said, picking up the thread, "there's a full paper trail. Fake businesses, bogus receipts, charges on her personal credit card, the Whole scheme's right there. Helena glanced my way and gave a knowing smile. And that, she said softly, is how you catch a real criminal. The hunter had just turned prey and it was all unfolding live on television. The community center exploded like someone had yanked the cap off a shaken soda. For a while, the crowd had been quietly tolerating Brenda's rambling conspiracy rant, but now they surged to life, firing off angry questions about the missing funds. Brenda, clearly, had no answers. $47,000. Harold's voice rang out through the noise. That explains why the pool's been a mess for 2 years and the landscaping looks like something out of a dust bowl, added Mrs. Patterson, her hearing aid squealing as voices climbed around her. But Brenda wasn't giving in without a last stand. She snatched the mic like it was her last lifeline, her voice cracking with panic. This is exactly what I warned you about. They're using high-level disinformation tactics to destroy my investigation. The Channel 12 reporter, now realizing this story had upgraded from suburban squabble to actual headline news, edged in closer with her cameraman. Mrs. Hutchinson, are you denying the accusations of embezzlement? I'm saying this is part of the conspiracy. Brenda shrieked, jabbing a trembling finger at Elena. She's a criminal who infiltrated our neighborhood and poisoned. Your mind's against me. That's when Officer Rodriguez, who had clearly heard more than enough, stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on his radio. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down and respond to these financial allegations. Then Sarah stood, her paralegal instincts kicking in. With all the composure of a seasoned trial lawyer, she addressed the room. Under Arizona Revised Statutes, Title 13, theft of community funds exceeding $10,000 qualifies as a Class 3 felony. And the evidence presented here outlines a pattern of embezzlement spanning 2 years. The legal language hit like ice water. The yelling stopped. People began realizing this wasn't just HOA drama anymore, this was serious criminal exposure. Brenda's inner circle began to shrink fast, backing away as though she were radioactive. The 3 board members who had propped her up suddenly found the floor tiles very interesting, desperate to distance themselves. I want to see this so-called evidence, Brenda demanded, but the authority had drained from her voice. It sounded more like begging now. Roberto pulled out his laptop and connected it to the projector. In seconds, the screen lit up with spreadsheets, bank statements, and transaction logs that spelled out a story even Brenda's diehards couldn't deny. Desert Management Solutions, Roberto began, highlighting one name. A shell company registered to a P.O. box controlled by Mrs. Hutchinson, $31,000 for services that were never performed. Gasps swept the room. Phones came out. Someone in the back began recording. Pinnacle Landscaping Services, Roberto continued. $16,000 for non-existent beautification projects. More phones, more gasps. And my personal favorite, Roberto added with a satisfied grin, community credit card purchases at Target, Walmart, and a weekend getaway in Sedona. That's when everything collapsed. Residents erupted, yelling about broken amenities, botched repairs, and years of cut corners. It sounded like a hornet's nest had been kicked by the world's dumbest bear. Then Elena stood, timing it perfectly. Her federal ID badge was clearly visible. She spoke with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent 15 years dismantling financial criminals. Mom, she said, locking eyes with Brenda, you've spent half a year filing bogus reports against a federal agent while committing the exact sort of financial crimes I investigate professionally. If it weren't so pathetic, the irony would almost be funny. The silence after that was so complete, you could hear camera shutters and the gentle whir of the news cam rolling on. Brenda's public unraveling. Brenda's face flickered through a dozen emotions, then landed on pure rage. You can't prove any of this. These documents are fakes. This is all part of the setup. But Officer Rodriguez was already flipping through his notepad. Mrs. Hutchinson, he said, based on the evidence shared tonight, I'm placing you under arrest for first-degree theft, a Class 3 felony under Arizona law. The click of the handcuffs echoed with a sense of justice. 6 months ago, they had started this whole chain of events. Now, they were finally closing on the right wrists. As Rodriguez led her toward the exit, Brenda turned back and shouted, "This isn't over. When the truth comes out, you'll all regret this." Elena called after her, sweetly, "Oh, the truth did come out. Just not the one you were hoping for." Applause broke out. The news crew caught everything, and somewhere in the crowd, someone began chanting, "Justice, justice. Soon, the whole room joined in. It was the perfect finale to the worst neighborhood debacle in Willowbrook's history. What followed Brenda's arrest felt like the climax of the best revenge flick ever made, except this time, the popcorn was free and the justice was real. Within 2 days, Channel 12's segment had gone viral. By the weekend, we were fielding interview requests from CNN, Fox, and every major morning show in the country. The tale of the HOA Koran who tried to get a federal agent arrested had officially gone national. Spring arrived in Willowbrook with dessert flowers and a powerful sense of vindication. Brenda's legal troubles multiplied like tumbleweeds in a windstorm. Maricopa County filed embezzlement charges. The FBI got involved over the false reports. The IRS uncovered years of unpaid taxes on her phony businesses. Even the U.S. Postal Service jumped in. It turns out mail fraud doesn't sit well when you're using PO boxes to set up fake companies. Rather than face federal prosecution, Brenda pled guilty to everything. She agreed to pay full restitution and penalties, $78,000 in total. We recovered every cent through court-ordered asset sales, including her beloved beige fortress, which was auctioned off to cover damages. But here's the best part. Instead of just refilling the HOA account, our newly elected board created something meaningful, the Willowbrook Community Scholarship Fund. Every year, we award 3 $5,000 scholarships to local students from families in need, turning Brenda's greed into new beginnings for kids who deserve a shot. The laughter of children in our restored parks, funded with recovered money, became the soundtrack of real justice. Roberto now runs the scholarship program with bulletproof accounting. Elena serves as advisory chair because having a financial crimes expert double-check the books is a great way to keep everyone honest. Sarah oversees compliance, Tom handles security, and Jennifer leads communications that actually connect people. Our story became a blueprint for HOA reform across the Southwest. We've hosted visitors from Texas, Nevada, and California, each one eager to adopt our Willowbrook Transparency Protocol, a system that makes embezzlement nearly impossible. Elena's badge went from neighborhood fear to neighborhood pride. Crime here basically vanished once word got out we had a federal agent living next door. The local kids started calling her Agent Elena, and she became our unofficial security guru, teaching folks how to spot real crimes from conspiracy fluff. My own telecom business exploded. Turns out, being the guy who helped take down HOA corruption gets you a lot of consulting work. I now advise communities in 3 states on financial transparency systems that keep corruption out for good. Lesson learned. Always insist on quarterly audits with independent oversight. It's the most effective way to prevent HOA disasters. Elena now gives talks for the Justice Department on workplace harassment and HOA corruption. She likes to joke that she made financial investigations sexy by turning them into community justice porn. But the real triumph, every October, we host our Accountability Day festival on the anniversary of Brenda's arrest. What started as a simple block party is now a full-on regional event with food trucks, live music, and workshops on civic involvement. We even used recovered funds to launch a desert conservation project. Our shared green spaces are now blooming with native plants, attracting hummingbirds whose wings whisper promises of renewal. Property values up 30%. Not because we enforce rigid rules, but because people want to live in places defined by transparency and real justice. Last month's local news follow-up featured Elena sharing the advice that's become our unofficial motto: document everything, follow the money, and never underestimate what neighbors can do when they work together for the right reasons. As I write this, our team is consulting with communities nationwide dealing with their own Brendas. Roberto's retirement is somehow busier than his career ever was, and he's loving it. So now I want to hear from you. What's your worst HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments below. I know some of you have tales that make Brenda look like an amateur. And if you enjoy watching corrupt power trips get demolished by truth and teamwork, hit that subscribe button. We've got an entire archive of justice served, and it's just getting started. From all of us at HOA Stories, thanks for tuning in. If today's saga of neighborly justice made you cheer, smash that like button, share your thoughts, and stick around because the next HOA drama, it's already brewing.